Hello and welcome to Sharing Vietnam on VTC International. I'm Ngọc speaking from Hanoi. Every day we feature a foreigner with interesting experience and perspective over life and work in Vietnam. And our guest today is Melvyn Lim, the country director of Singapore-based Capital Education. Melvyn, welcome to our show today.
Thank you for inviting me to your show.
My pleasure. And Melvyn will share with us his interesting stories about life here and local students. But before that, we will get to know him a little bit in this following short video clip. Well, we have got to know a little bit about Melvyn in the clip. Now let's hear his stories about working and living here. Melvyn, so what brought you to Vietnam?
Well, I actually had an opportunity 7 years ago to be in Vietnam to manage English center in Nha Trang City. And I took it because during then I haven't had the chance to visit Vietnam, and since then I've stayed on and I like it there, which is why 7 years later I'm still in Vietnam.
Okay, so before Vietnam, which countries did you work at?
Well, of course, being Singaporean, I did work in Singapore for several years, and I did spend around 3 years based in a regional office in Kuala Lumpur. And while based in Kuala Lumpur, I did business development work around the regions, from places like China, Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, Malaysia, but not Vietnam.
Okay, so you've been to many Asian countries.
Right, yes.
So what is the difference between Vietnam and those countries?
Well, I find that one thing good about Vietnam, or one thing interesting about Vietnam is it has a huge population, and the population in Vietnam is really young. So there is lots of potential in terms of education or market-wise.
Okay, so now you've been here for quite a few years.
Right.
So in retrospect, what is your most unforgettable, interesting story during working here?
Okay, I do have a chance to meet up with local students, and I think that generally local students here are very enthusiastic about study. One thing that really surprises me a lot while working in this industry is that a lot of students are actually constantly looking for ways to upgrade themselves. Students do not just have one degree, they have multiple degrees.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's really amazing.
Yeah. So that is about your work.
Right.
So now let's talk a little bit about your private life, your hobbies, for example. So any plan to pursue any hobbies in Vietnam?
Well, I do have one hobby which I'm very keen on, and that is salsa.
Salsa?
Right. Yes, salsa. In fact, there's a pretty big salsa community in Hanoi, and in my own personal experience, I would say that the salsa dancers in Vietnam are really good dancers. Yes. Okay,
so what is your plan with learning or mingling with the local salsa community?
Well, I do meet up with a lot with the local salsa community dancers, and I find that that's a good way for me to relax after work and get some exercise after work. And I do enjoy going out with the local dancers here.
How often do you go dancing every week?
Well, a couple of times a week. And I usually use it for a matter of distressing and for good exercise.
Well, Melvyn has mentioned his family and his children, and he's now working with Vietnamese youngsters who attend courses in his English educational company. And now we will get to know more about the educational landscape in Vietnam in a short report.
Vietnam's education is considered as a lucrative business for many investors. Most of education programs in Vietnam are still outdated, which forces a large number of parents to send their children to study abroad or at international schools. This is also an inevitable trend in choosing the development path for the young Vietnamese people. Vietnam has now attracted a relatively big number of foreigners and overseas Vietnamese to invest in education and training. According to statistics from foreign investment agencies, as of June 23, 2011, there were 141 valid foreign investment projects in education and training, with a total investment of 345 million USD and chartered capital of 121 million USD.
Well, we have get to know about the educational landscape in Vietnam in that short report. Now we will talk to Melvyn to understand more. So, Melvyn, why did your company decide to open business in Vietnam?
Well, the way we can see is that Vietnam basically is a country with a big population, and we do find that that Vietnamese students are very enthusiastic about always upgrading themselves. So we find and analyze that it's a big potential market for us to invest in this country.
Mm-hmm. So which services and products does your company offer?
Right. My center, Capital Education, we are an authorized center for this University of Cambridge International Exam, and we do provide business program from the University of Cambridge. At the same time, we do work with a Singapore educational group called the AEC Educational College to provide hospitality training.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think those hospitality, that industry has been developing very rapidly in Vietnam, and as well as the demand for IELTS examinations to study abroad is huge among Vietnamese students. And so I guess that you have met or worked with a lot of students here. What is your impression of Vietnamese youngsters?
I guess Vietnamese youngsters are pretty smart, very enthusiastic about their studies. However, I think Vietnamese students, like students anywhere else, they haven't been much exposed to the knowledge from overseas. So therefore, when it comes to actually having a more in-depth discussion, sometimes they are not able to cope with that level of discussion. And I find that that's something that the Vietnamese students can definitely work on to improve themselves before they go out to work.
Yeah, so it's a kind of soft skills,
correct.
Doesn't it? So which soft skills does your company focus on?
Well, at the moment we do training courses such as presentation skills, on CV writing, on networking skills, on sales skills, and various skills to improve the students' employability. It's not so much their knowledge that is important, but it's rather are they able to cope with the real working world that will determine their success in life.
And for a foreign invested educational firm like yours in Vietnam, what are the major advantages as well as challenges?
Well, the major advantage is that, from my background, I've worked for more than 15 years in various countries and various industries. So therefore, when I come to Vietnam to set up this center, I do understand what are the areas that most employers or foreign companies are looking for when they want to hire a local graduate. So we find that to actually train the student well or to help them to gain employment, students should have a good knowledge of how business works. And by taking this into consideration, what we do in our class is we utilize a lot of case studies and discussion that will help to build up the students' level of knowledge and confidence when dealing in work.
Yep. So is the young population the biggest advantage of educational businesses in Vietnam? And what are some others?
Well, the training for young adults is one area, and I think there's another area which is pretty hot right now in Vietnam is training for kids, which is why, from my observation, I can see that there are a lot of foreign invested organizations that invest in international schools or kindergarten at the moment.
So to my observation, there has been quite a number of foreign institutions set up in Vietnam to provide educational services for young people, including children.
Correct.
So do you think that the market has reached a saturated point, or do you think there is potential for further foreign investment in this sector in Vietnam?
Well, based from what the report I've read, from the newspaper, I think in the educational system in Vietnam, there are still too many students in a class. So I guess there's still room for further investment in this market. But as in any other business, any investors, when they want to come into this market, they cannot rely on a generic strategy. They have to find ways in which to differentiate themselves and add value to the consumer here.
Okay, so there is potential, but
Yes.
there must be new way to
Correct.
tap the potential.
Correct, yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Well, Melvyn has mentioned the potential for foreign investment in the educational system in Vietnam. Now we will take a look at a short report to know the situation of foreign educational institutions here.
Socialization of Vietnamese education is a matter of deep concern for many people. Many foreign institutions are providing a variety of education services in Vietnam currently. However, each institution offers a different teaching methodology. In addition, many foreign education centers initially apply for language teaching permission only, but then expanded to various fields and measures. Those centers provide a wide range of certificates, but none get authorized by any official quality evaluation organizations. As a result, the overall framework is badly affected, causing a waste of money and ruining the reputation of other serious investors.
Well, we have just got to know more about the situation of foreign investors' educational firms in Vietnam, and now we will talk to Melvyn to understand more about some issues related to those businesses. So Melvyn, I have noticed that different educational systems invested by foreigners in Vietnam have different teaching methodologies.
Right.
So what is your own difference?
Well, our difference is in the sense that, as I mentioned earlier, that we use a lot of case studies in our class. So students are exposed to real-life business situations, not just in Vietnam, but in overseas. And in the course, students actually need to have lots of discussion as to how should they solve problems that they may encounter once they get out to work.
Okay, Melvyn, so it seems that your company has been working well in Vietnam. So what is your plan for the future?
Our plan is to continue to bring in good courses into Vietnam, and courses that students actually need, or the industry do demand in the future.
Yeah, and in order to expand a business, you will
Right.
need the manpower.
Correct.
So, how have you been preparing the Vietnamese human resources for your expansion in the future?
Well, during the course of training, we do identify students or good students that could be potential staff or employees of the company. At the same time, we are actually doing internal training for our staff, in which I conduct short trainings and guide them as to certain practices that they should adopt while working in a Singapore or international firm.
Okay, so it seems that you are enjoying life here in Vietnam, and
Yes.
it's a pleasure to see that.
Correct.
So Melvyn, thank you very much for joining us today, and I wish you further success in your work and further happiness with your hobby of dancing here in Vietnam. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, we've just talked to Melvyn from Singapore, who has shared some interesting stories about his working with local Vietnamese students and his hobby of dancing salsa in Vietnam. And that's the end of our Sharing Vietnam today. And please come back to us tomorrow for further interesting experience of foreigners in Vietnam. And thank you for watching.